Hello everyone, welcome to another learning session. So this is an introductory session to virtual machines, and I am assuming you have seen or attended previous fundamentals sessions. If not, you can watch them in Trainso YouTube channel, or you can watch them in cloudrix.com portal. Azure Virtual Machines 101. Virtual machines are part of almost all of the certifications, including AZ 900, AZ 104, AZ 204. And through this tech series, I plan to cover all of them, starting with Azure Virtual Machines 101. So people from AZ 900 or AZ 104 or AZ 204 all can benefit from this particular session. You cannot say at your work, right? I have taken only this certification so that I don't work or I don't know about other things that are not part of this particular certification. So for that purpose, we always focus on what is relevant to work. And at the same time, we will try to cover everything that is needed for a particular certification. Once you watch this session, you have to follow the instructions given for homework or further learning. And then you have to come back and ask doubts in our WhatsApp groups. There are many experts, people who are continuously taking sessions for 104, 204, 400. All those people are present in our WhatsApp groups. And also you have a lot of old students who have completed the best training programs such as Forum CA. So all you have to do is learn and then ask doubts in the group, and you will definitely get help. Just in case if you are new to my sessions, I am Hatin Ganigatotu. I have a few certifications that make me eligible for taking trainings on Azure. And also I have written few books and have got some awards. You can learn all about me from this link hatin.github.io, which I had created as part of the GitHub 101 session. So you can also create a page similar to hatin.github.io following the GitHub 101 video that is available on YouTube. A quick recap from Cloud Computing 101. Traditional cloud abstractions or service models. How many of you are new to these terms? IaaS, PaaS, SaaS. If you are new to these terms, you can just mention N. If you are comfortable with these terms, you can just mention C. Just imagine that we have a data center, which is a building with some computers. And all these computers are managed by us. So we have to do a lot of things, starting from buying the hardware, setting them up, setting up the networking, storage, servers, all physically. And then for anything such as cloud to work, we need some kind of virtualization. And on top of virtualization, we will have operating system, middleware, runtime, data applications, lot of things will be there. All these things will be managed by that particular company who owns that data center, or maybe they might outsource it. Whatever it is their responsibility to run that data center. But then you are spending a lot of time in managing things that are not directly related to your business. So your business might be a education tech, or might be a bank, or might be some other platform that provides some other services. So how can you spend more time on your business logic rather than spending time on unrelated things? That is where cloud computing comes, and cloud computing help you. So there is more to cloud computing as we had discussed in Cloud Computing 101. But for this particular session, you need to understand that in on-premises or in our own data center, everything will be done by us. And the first level of abstraction on cloud computing was infrastructure as a service. In infrastructure as a service, everything physical and up till virtualization is taken care by your cloud provider. So your cloud provider takes care of everything physical, like buying machines, setting up, and all those things. So you have to start working from the OS level. What are the things that you need to do from an OS level? You need to patch it regularly. You might need to install a security software. you'll have to install the tools needed for your development or deployment. A lot of things you'll have to do on top of your operating system. So you are still doing some work that is not completely related to your business logic. Cloud computing providers came up with other abstractions such as platform as a service, where a lot of additional things like operating system, middleware, all those tools installation and all will be taken care by your cloud provider. For example, Azure has something called as Azure App Services. So you can tell Azure that I need an app service on Windows and I need to work with Java. So everything will be installed and given to you so that you can just work on top of that runtime. And then you have other abstraction such as software as a service. In software as a service, you just configure and use the application. You don't worry about anything else. Behind the scenes, it may be infrastructure as a service or platform as a service or something else. But as an end user, for example, an user of Gmail or Outlook, for me, everything is software as a service. And then there are also other abstractions such as identity as a service, container as a service, serverless. Even within serverless, you have a function as a service, no code or low code. A lot of things we will be discussing in our Azure learning journey. But today's discussion is focused on getting started with virtual machines. And can you guess which of these Azure virtual machines fits into? Yes, it will be infrastructure as a service. So when to use virtual machines or IaaS? So when you need more control over computing environment than the choices such as PaaS, example app services or other managed services or serverless. For example, if you need to install some custom software and do some custom things that are not possible with app services, then you need to go with virtual machines. And also some other common IaaS business scenarios include quick and economical setup of test or dev environments. So virtual machines are nothing but a machine on a cloud. We discussed about virtualization and all in Cloud Computing 101. There may be multiple virtual machines on a single physical host machine. Once you log into this virtual machine, it is almost similar to your regular laptop or your regular work machine, depending on the operating system and other things. If you want to test something out, you can quickly set up a test or a demo environment on the cloud just by spinning up a virtual machine. Similarly, for website hosting using IaaS, it is usually cheaper than traditional hosting. But here again, you will have more things to manage. Always a better practice, if possible, is to go to PaaS or Azure App Services. And then for certain high performance computing and big data analytics, and for extending data center with minimal efforts, there are a lot of places where virtual machines are still being used and useful. But in general, everybody are moving towards either PaaS like app services or similar services in other clouds, or they are moving to a container-based approach based on Docker or Kubernetes and all. The next session is planned on Kubernetes, which is Kubernetes 101. It will be really useful for understanding about Kubernetes as well as for further Azure Kubernetes and related sessions. Planning before VM provisioning. First, you can start with network. What is this network? So it is a virtual network. We had discussed virtual networks already. You can watch the recordings if you have access to, or we will be again discussing them in detail. We come back to each and every topic again and again and continuously learn, adding newer inclusions or features. So virtual networks are used to provide private connectivity between VMs and other Azure services within the same VNet. We can, however, configure a network to allow access to external services, including on-premises networks. You can imagine a network which does not have any connectivity to outside world, and then you put all of your virtual machines and other services inside that network. You give access to outside world as it is needed. And even within these virtual networks, you have something called as subnets or subnetworks. And each of these subnets or subnetworks can be used to provide different permissions. So can you give some scenario where you would give different access permissions to certain virtual machines from the internet? One use case is when you are building a web application, you will have a web tier and a database tier. So some of your virtual machines may be working on the web tier, and some of your virtual machines may be on the database tier. So your end users need to only access your web tier, your website, and then your website will be accessing your database. The end users doesn't have to directly access your databases, so they have to just use your web application, and web application internally connects to your database. So in this particular scenario, there will be a subnet that will accept requests from internet, and there will be other subnet with database servers that will accept requests only from your web tier subnet. You can do all these configurations with virtual networks and subnetworks. If you are new to IP addresses and subnetting concept, I would recommend you watch or attend the session IP addresses and subnetting at Trainso YouTube channel. You can watch or attend the recordings of Azure Networking 4104 modules 4 to 6. And for naming the VM, some constraints up to 15 characters on Windows VM and up to 64 characters on Linux VM. So whatever numbers I provide here, always it is good to just Google out and see if something has changed, because Azure and many cloud providers evolve continuously. Some of these numbers may be limitations that they may overcome with. It is a good convention to include the following info in the name: environment, location, instance number, product service, role, so that by seeing the VM name itself, you can understand, okay, what this is being used for. And this becomes important in a big company where you will have lots of virtual machines. Maybe you can filter out based on the web or DB, or maybe you can filter out based on your team name. Virtual machine pricing options. You have the following pricing options with virtual machines. You have pay as you go or consumption based. You pay for the compute capacity by the second with no commitments or upfront payments. So if you are using it for 1 hour, you pay for that 1 hour and then don't pay for anything else. Then Azure has something called as Azure Savings Plan for compute. You get lower prices by agreeing to spend a fixed hourly amount on select compute services for 1 or 3 years. List of compute services you can Google out. It could change in future also. And virtual machine is definitely one of them and our topic for today. So if the usage is less than hourly committed amount, you need to pay the committed savings plan prices for that hour, even if you don't use. And if the usage is more, additional usage is billed at the regular pay-as-you-go prices and invoiced separately. So if you are using around whatever you have planned, it will be good savings. And with savings plan, the recommendation is to use it for dynamic workloads while accommodating for planned or unplanned changes. And if you have stable, predictable workloads with no planned changes, then you may go with reserved instances, which gives a lot of savings compared to options such as pay-as-you-go and Azure savings plan. You are telling that, okay, I need n number of instances for 1 year or 3 years. You get a much better discount than the above two options. Similar to a savings plan, if you are not using that instance, you will still be billed for that particular instance. And finally, the spot option. Spot, you can buy unused Azure compute capacity at deep discounts for running interruptible workloads. What do you mean by interruptible workloads? So imagine that you are having a website running. Can you ask Azure to take back that virtual machine, stopping that website anytime Azure wants? No, right? So that has to continuously run. You cannot interrupt like that. But if you are doing some kind of batch processing, imagine that you have to process 1,000 records and you are picking up those records from some kind of queue. Maybe you are doing one by one. Maybe you did 10 of them and then you can wait for some time, and then you can continue with 11. In that case, spot instances make more sense. Spot instance means Azure may have a lot of virtual machines that are not used by anybody. So you can tell that, okay, I am willing to pay this much amount. Maybe it could be much lesser, maybe 10% of the regular pricing, or maybe even lesser than that. I can pay only this much amount. If you are okay, I can use it. But if you have some other use with that virtual machine, or if somebody else is ready to pay more than what I am paying, you can take it back from me and then give it to them. So from an Azure perspective or from a cloud provider perspective, anyway, those virtual machines are not used by anybody. So whatever this particular customer is giving is a plus for them. Azure virtual machine states and billing. So some of these states will be discussed in much detail in future sessions. But for now, our focus is mostly on billing, but we will see what are these states. There is a star with all the not build options. We will discuss that star towards the end. When the state is creating, a virtual machine is allocating resources. And starting means allocation is done. Now virtual machine is powering up. Running means virtual machine is fully up. The state is the standard working state. Stopping means this is a transitional state between running and stopped. Stop means the virtual machine is allocated on a host but not running as of now. Also called as powered off state or stopped allocated state. This state can be the result of invoking a power off API operation or invoking a shutdown from within the guest OS. The stop state may also be observed briefly during a VM creation or while starting a VM from deallocated state. The next you have deallocating state. This state is the transitional state between running and deallocated. Finally, you have a deallocated state. The virtual machine has released the REAS on the underlying hardware and is powered off. The state is also referred to as a stopped deallocated state. Out of these, creating, deallocating, and deallocated are not built. So basically, if your virtual machine is stopped and deallocated, you will not be billed for the compute. But if your virtual machine is using some storage or networking components that cannot be used by others, then you will be charged for those. For example, if you are having some data stored in your disk, nobody else will be able to use those disks until you give back that disk to Azure, right? So you'll be charged for those storage disks, but for the compute, you will not be charged because Azure will reallocate the compute resources to somebody else who needs it. You can explore the pricing calculator. So you can use the pricing calculator to explore how the pricing will be. So you can choose different options and play around, such as region, operating system, category, instance series, instance types, number of virtual machines, whether you are going with pay as you go, whether you are going with 1 year savings plan, 3 year savings plan, 1 year reserved, 3 year reserved, or whether you are going to use an Azure hybrid benefit. Based on that, you can see how the pricing changes. For example, if you move from Windows to Linux, in most cases, your pricing comes down drastically. And if you use Azure hybrid benefit, it comes down. If you use reservations, it comes down. You can just play around and see what would be my average expense, and then you can take a final call. So you can watch or attend the session on SLAs and pricing at Trainso YouTube channel if you want to learn more about the pricing from an Azure Fundamentals perspective. You have different kinds of workloads for which you will be using a virtual machine. You have general purpose with the balanced CPU to memory ratio, compute optimized, which needs high CPU to memory ratio, memory optimized, high memory to CPU ratio, storage optimized, high disk throughput and I/O, GPU, specialized virtual machines targeted for heavy graphic rendering and video editing, high performance compute, the fastest and the most powerful CPU virtual machines. To make our lives easier, Azure has created different series of virtual machines. A series, they are entry-level VMs for dev workers, good for dev worker servers, low traffic web servers, small to medium databases, POCs, etc. As a special note, the basic and standard A series VMs will retire on 31st August 2024. And B series, they are economical burstable VMs for workloads that typically run at a low to moderate baseline CPU utilization, but sometimes you need to burst to significantly higher CPU utilization when the demand rises. A very good example would be build servers. Solely when you trigger a build, these servers actually do a significant amount of work. So you can also use for dev or test servers, low traffic web servers, small to medium databases, POCs, etc. Also note that BS series VMs are not hyper-threaded. D series, general purpose compute, good for most enterprise applications, e-commerce systems, web front ends, desktop virtualization solutions, customer relationship management, etc. Also note that the D series types DS, DDS, DAS, DIDS, DPS, DPDS, DPLS, and DPLDS support Azure Premium SSDs and Ultra Disk Storage depending on regional availability. E series optimized for in-memory hyper-threaded applications are configured with high memory to core ratios, good for SAP HANA, SAP NetWeaver, large relational database servers, etc. F series, compute optimized virtual machines, good for batch processing, web servers, analytics, and gaming, etc. G series, memory and storage optimized VMs, good for large SQL and NoSQL databases, ERP, and data warehousing solutions. Then you have H series, high performance compute VMs, good for fluid dynamics, finite element analysis, seismic processing, risk analysis, quantum simulation, etc. L series, storage optimized VMs, good for NoSQL databases such as Cassandra, MongoDB, Redis, etc. And also data warehousing applications and large transactional databases, etc. M series, memory optimized VMs, good for SAP HANA and SQL Hackathon, etc. And also other large in-memory business critical workloads requiring massive parallel compute power. You also have MV2 series, which is the largest memory optimized VMs, same uses as M series. Yes, lots of options. So, but in most cases, your regular workloads will be using D, and other workloads, if you are in a particular area, then you will know which option to select. So you have finally in series, which are GPU enabled VMs, good for simulation, deep learning, graphics rendering, video editing, gaming, and remote visualization. And as a special note, N series types NCS V3, NCS V2, NC, and NDS VMs offer optional InfiniBand interconnect to enable scale-up performance. Definitely, there are a lot of options as you mentioned. For the exam purposes, you can read them a few times, or you can listen or watch this video a couple of times to get some idea. But from a work perspective, you generally use for your regular workloads D series mostly. If you have a specific use cases such as video editing, then you will know what to use. And if you have a specific use case for a massive parallel compute power requirement, then you will know what to use. The next task is to determine virtual machine storage. Each Azure VM has 2 or more disks. OS disk, it will be holding a Windows OS if it is Windows operating system or Linux. Then you have a temporary disk. These are not available in all SKUs. When available, the content can be lost, and hence no critical data should be kept in this temporary disk. And finally, you have a data disk. You can add data disk if you want. OS and data disk reside in Azure storage accounts. So you'll have a complete picture of these disks when you also learn about storage accounts. Within the storage account, you have standard option, premium option, or ultra option. Within standard, you have HDD and SSD, and you have a premium SSD and ultra SSD. And Azure VMs are managed. This means Azure manages it for you. More on VM storage. All these are stored as VHDs or virtual hard disks. In Windows, the temporary disk we discussed, right, is labeled as D drive and is used to store something called as page file.sys. You can also use it, but make sure you don't store any critical data in it as a good practice. On Linux, temporary disk is typically /dev/stb and is formatted and mounted by the /mount by Azure Linux agent. Data disks are registered as SCSI drives and labeled with a letter that we choose. With the premium storage, we can achieve 80,000 IOPS per VM and a disk throughput of 2000 Mbps. Using premium disks, we can get up to 256 TB of storage per VM. Also note that the size of the VM series types determine how many data disks we can attach to it and the type of storage we can use to host the disk. So all those series and all those sizes within those series all matters. So you will have to do little bit of exploration if your workload is not a regular workload. That is something that your architects will be doing. So we'll see how we can quickly create a virtual machine. So if you go to portal.azure.com, you can see the Azure portal, and you can just search for virtual machines. Since I have used virtual machines, it is there, but you can just go and search for virtual machines, select virtual machine, and you can use this option or you can use this option to create a virtual machine. And first thing, you have to select a subscription, then you have to select a resource group, and then you need to give a name for your virtual machine. And then you have to select a region, then you have to select availability options. We have not learned availability options, so you have mainly 3 options. You have availability zone, you have virtual machine scale set, you have availability set. So we'll have a separate session focusing on these 3. And then you have standard, you have trusted launch virtual machines option. And then you select your image, whether it is a Linux image or whether it is a Windows image. And then you can select your VM architecture, whether it is ARM64 or whether it is x64. And then we discussed about Azure Spot instances or Spot discount, right? If you want, you can select it, and then you can select additional options such as capacity only for eviction type or price or capacity option. So if you select capacity only, your virtual machine will be evicted when Azure's excess capacity disappears. Price or capacity, your virtual machine will be evicted when Azure's excess capacity disappears or costs exceed your specified max price. And also you can say whether to stop or deallocate or whether to delete it. Then you can also select your size. We learned, right, different sizes. You can select that, and then you can either use SSH public key since it is a Linux account, or you can use a password option. And you also have inbound port rules. So since it is a Linux VM, it will be SSH that we are concerned about. Can you tell me if it is a Windows VM, how do we connect to that particular VM remotely? So Linux, we saw it is SSH. What about Windows? How do you connect to a Windows machine remotely? And what port do we use for connecting? Yeah, it is RDP. So we'll see that in next slide. I just thought I will mention it here. And then next you can select your disk. So you can select from a premium SSD or standard SSD or standard HDD here. And you can specify whether to delete that disk along with the VM or persist it. You can configure your key management and other things. You can enable ultra disk compatibility. All these Options we will discuss separately in detail. But you have this, you have networking, you have management, you have monitoring, you have other advanced things, you have tags, and finally you have the review plus create option. Yeah, validation failed definitely because we have not selected all options. And some of these sections itself are separate modules for your AZ 104, like networking, like storage, like monitoring. Many of these are modules on their own. So once you have all those knowledge, you'll be able to configure all these things correctly. Until then, if you are learning, starting with the virtual machines, you just go ahead and configure your basics, and then you can leave everything else as is, and then you can play around with your virtual machine. And finally, review and create. If the review and create is successful, you can create from here. You also have the download a template for automation option. Now the validation has failed. Otherwise, you can download a template. So this template, which is also called as ARM templates or ARM templates, so they can be used to create Azure environments programmatically. You may also use an external tool such as Terraform for provisioning your environment. So in practice, I have seen many people using Terraform. And Terraform is something that will work with multiple clouds, not just Azure. And that is why people love Terraform. And we have Terraform sessions also happening in parallel. If you are interested, you can attend. I'll just give some random values just to see if the validation will succeed. So if the validation fails, you can see, okay, failed for capacity restrictions, is currently not available in location Central India. Please try another size to deploy a different location or different size. So you can see all these things, and then you can decide, okay, if a particular thing is not there, you can use something else, or you can choose a different region. So choosing a region is also important, right? So let us go back to the presentation. So different ways to connect to VMs. Remote Desktop Protocol or RDP for Windows-based virtual machines. RDP creates a GUI session and accepts inbound traffic on TCP port 3389. We may also use WinRM to create a command line session so we can run scripts. SSH or Secure Shell provide a means to connect to Linux-based virtual machines. It uses public and private keys. And how many of you are aware about symmetric encryption, asymmetric encryption, public and private keys, and all those things? If you are aware, you can say A. If you are not aware, you can say N. Or if you have some knowledge, you can say S. You can refer to systems design videos to understand more about those topics. And if you have further doubts, just ask in our WhatsApp group, and I'll be more than happy to help you. So these are very important topics if you want to grow towards an architect role. If you really want to clear an architect exam or architect interview, or to work as a good architect. And finally, you have a Bastion subnet option for RDP or SSH through the portal itself over SSL. So you don't need any clients. So for remote desktop and for SSH, you need some clients on your machine. For SSH, PuTTY is a popular tool that you can use from Windows machine to connect your Linux virtual machine. For further personal learning, I would suggest you go through these Microsoft Learn tasks. So first one is introduction to Azure VMs, then choosing the right disk storage for your virtual machine workload, creating a Windows virtual machine in Azure, creating a Linux virtual machine in Azure, connect to virtual machines through Azure Portal by using Azure Bastion. Some of these are just for reading. Some of these may have some interactive labs. Some of these you may have to practice on your own. And at any point of time, if you are stuck, just ask in our WhatsApp group, and there will be people ready to help you. Personally, I'll try to come on during the community hours, can discuss together during those community hours. There is no shortage of resources on the internet. But sometimes you need to ask doubts to some real people and learn along with real people and then discuss together with real people. And today's homework, Lab 01, Task 1, you can just search for Azure AZ 104 Labs in Google, and you can go to AZ 104 Labs page. You remember my GitHub pages website, right? hartin.github.io. So here also Microsoft uses github.io for hosting their labs, and it is publicly available for everybody. So you have to follow this lab document, do the lab task. In this case, it is task 1. Other tasks are there, but we have not discussed them. Ask doubts in groups, either Facebook or WhatsApp, wherever you are part of. And optionally, you can attend a live lab review or walkthrough sessions in WhatsApp group, because many people, as part of their learning, they come and do labs, and they invite people to join when they do the labs. So that is why our WhatsApp groups has a 24/7 dedicated Zoom meeting. So it is not used for any other purpose. It is dedicated to every WhatsApp group we have. Every WhatsApp group has a separate one. So you just mention in your respective group, I'm going to do the lab. Can somebody join me now? And then you can explain whatever you are doing. And other people may be asking doubts. All these things can help you become a better Azure Cloud engineer. Whenever you are going for any kind of interviews or maybe a KT session for your colleagues, it will be very easy for you. In this virtual machine intro series, we will have 2 more sessions. First one will be virtual machine availability. We'll discuss about availability sets, availability zones, scale sets, and also we'll discuss the differences between update domains and fault domains, horizontal and vertical scaling, etc. The next session will be virtual machine extensions. We'll discuss about custom script extensions, decide state configuration or DSG, pull mode versus push mode, etc. Let us all learn and grow together. If you are new to our groups, to learn together, join CloudRig's WhatsApp groups with daily discussions for a fee or for free by taking just one community session per month to the group. Even if you have a membership, it will be very good to take just one community session to the group per month, because you are giving back something to the community, right? Similarly, if you don't want to join a WhatsApp group but just want to attend live sessions, you have membership plans. You can check cloudrigs.com/membership. And if you are a working professional and want a slow-paced and consistent course along with the work to become a cloud master in 11 months, you may check the Forum CA for working professionals from this link, cloudrigs.com/forum-cs-WP. And finally, you can see all of our learning options in cloudrigs.com/learning. So please spread the word with your friends and colleagues, and let us all learn together and grow together. The more experts come to our group, we all will be benefiting, right? Maybe we will get answers for our questions faster. Maybe because of these professional relationships, we get better referrals in our work. So be part of a community and learn together rather than be an individual who likes to be called as an island and then work and learn alone. So there is a question, would you like to share the plan for new people? So for new people, I would suggest you first start with the Cloud Computing 101, and then you ask, what should I do next? So in that way, you will have a continuous interaction with me, and I'll be familiar with your names. And whenever you need help, you can definitely talk to me, because many people call me the day before the interview. When you ask for me to schedule a meeting, if your names are familiar, then it will be easy for me also to help you out. And if you need a complete plan, there is a playlist that is created in Trainso YouTube channel called as a Forum CA preparation course. That playlist you can watch in order, and then you can ask doubts in our WhatsApp group or in Facebook group or in comments under that video. Thank you, everyone. See you all in the next class. Until then, bye-bye and have a nice day.